Hey everyone, today we're going to be getting a little bit into the differences that I've seen anyway between small business and private equity or the big business people that we can sometimes brush shoulders with in this space.
I'm David C. Barnett, and you're tuned in to Small Business and Deal Making, the podcast, YouTube channel, and blog where I talk about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium sized businesses while controlling risk. So, if you're looking to take control of your future through buying a business one day, or if you already own a business and you're looking to grow or exit, you've come to the right place. I talk about interesting things, I talk to interesting people, and I answer your questions every week right here. So, be sure to hit like and be sure to hit subscribe, and let's get to it. Are you thinking of growing your business or beginning a journey into entrepreneurship? Take a shortcut to success by buying an existing and profitable business the right way. Visit businessbuyeradvantage.com and learn more about my online training, group coaching, and consulting services designed to help you win.
Awesome. So I'm recording this on a Monday morning, and over the course of the weekend, I bumped into a couple of different conversations on Twitter. And this morning, as I was getting ready for my day, I just realized how they kind of fit together, and they might make an interesting video for all of you because it ties in really well with a lot of the topics or themes that I see consistently in the emails and messages that I get from people out there in the viewing audience. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share some of these tweets and things. So I'm going to make it as big as possible here. So this is an account that I follow called Gas Biz Guy. And I only started following him a little while ago, but he talks a lot about the small business issues related to the gas station business. And if you want to find me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is at dbarnettmoncton. Moncton being my hometown. That's how I stumbled across this Twitter handle. But let me dive into this, and it's basically a general small business post. And he says how I outperform the competition, and he talks about employees and his vacation policy. He talks about incentives and how they're obtainable. He talks about debt, and he says our hauling company is debt free. We intend to be the last guy standing when it hits the fan. We are built for it. We have more free cash flow to pay employees and operate with zero stress about hitting numbers. Okay. And that very interesting comment, right? Then he talks about sales, and he talks about his vendors, and he talks about requirements and quotas, how he doesn't have any quotas and all this kind of thing. Um, and at the end here, he says, what we are doing is trying to create a lifestyle. I tell them all, I'm not your daddy. I'm not here to raise you. And that was your parents' job. Act like an adult and we will get along fine. Don't, and you're out. If you're a pain in the butt, you are too. Go ahead, HR folks. Tell me I can't. I can, and I do. This is it. This is what we do, et cetera, et cetera. So he's basically laying out his philosophy, I guess would be the best way to put it, about how he feels about his small business. And the part about the debt, okay, that's what piqued my attention. So I went and I reshared the post and I quoted his debt thing. And so I put here, you can run your small business like a big corporation and try to max out your ROE, return on equity, or you can do it like many small business owners and de-risk. And then I put his quote here, that what he had explained about debt, how he has no debt, he wants maximum free cash flow, and he wants zero stress about hitting numbers. Okay. He goes, and then I put at the bottom, fact is, when you're the owner, you set the strategic plan. And I added, what he doesn't say is that he'll be in a great position to acquire the assets of weaker competitors if or when things turn sour. Okay. Which he will be. And I'll tell you quite frankly, over the course of my career, I've met many, many successful long-term small business owners. And one of the things that they have in common, and I have said this, I've talked about this before, is that small business owners will bring their homeowner, their household attitude about debt into their small business. And they'll say, I don't want to have debt, et cetera, et cetera. This can be both good and bad. And I've talked before about how it reduces return on equity. Okay. I'm not really sharing an opinion here of what I think of his strategy. I'm just saying when you own a small business, you're free to do as you wish. And so he actually replied back to me on this. And he said, I have not even once calculated ROE. I wake up, love what I do, feel like it has purpose, and repeat. And I said, absolutely. And some other people chimed in there as well. And so basically, you know, Gas Biz Guy has a philosophy about how he wants to live, what makes him comfortable in his business, how he feels, secure in the long-term prospects of his business, and a lot of it has to do with not having debt. Okay, what is debt? Well, it's an obligation that has to be paid to someone else. So in the case of debt, it is a monthly payment typically, excuse me, which is a mixture of interest and principal being paid back. But other people operate businesses with obligations over their head all the time. And it's typically, bigger businesses that have shareholders that are looking for dividends, or people that have investors that have put money in and are demanding a certain rate of return. And so what was interesting is further along, I came across this other conversation on Twitter. And so this is from a woman named Kelsey, and she says, um, and she's talking about food marketing. So she's talking about this particular company called Kodiak, and she talks about its background, how they came up, how people have learned to trust their name, etc. And then she talks about a statement that they make on their packaging here about the bottle containing less sugar than maple syrup. And then she gets into the actual details of whether or not this particular claim makes sense or not. Um, and then she talks about how her people will just kind of trust the label and not really do the kind of research that she's talking about. And then this last part here is interesting. She says, and I bet that's exactly what the PE firm is counting on when they want to expand the product line but don't yet have new products that are a perfect fit with the original mission of the brand. So instead of working harder to figure out what the next great product is, they settle for close enough to deceive the consumer. That's her opinion, because increased sales are more important, right? And so further down here, um, I responded back to this and I said, I've had many conversations lately about short-sightedness of PE acquirers. Actions like this just create new openings for new competitors, which it does, right? Because if a PE firm buys quote unquote the healthy option, and then they change the product so that they're not as healthy, they just created a new space in the market for someone new to create the healthy option, right? And then some other people chime in. And this person here, a leasing lawyer, says they seem to ruin everything they touch, especially in the food space. And then I put another response. And I say, I've seen it in many industries. The pressure is huge to grow profits, and they normally default to raise prices, cut costs. Next quarter is more important than the next decade. So why is that? Why does this typically happen? So um, let me further expand upon this by telling you about one of the other conversations I've been having. So, someone I know very closely works in a service industry, and they work in a business, and one particular PE group has bought almost all of the independents in a particular market within this sector. Okay, and I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is, but um, they bought them all, and they effectively control the market. And so, what did they do? They've been raising prices, and they have not been raising things like wages. Now, staff turnover has started to become a problem because uh, the wages just aren't being increased in line with inflation. And when I talk with this individual that's working in this space, I'm like, I say, like, well, how do the customers and employees all feel about what's changing in these businesses? And I'm told, the employees hate it. The employees know what's happening. The customers understand what's happening. The customers see their bills going up. The customers understand that this new corporate ownership that is in play, and the the other independent operator is just flat out because people are actively trying to move over there. And what has happened is that there is now definitely an opening in this industry for new independents to come in. Like there are employees in the sector who would love to jump ship to go to someplace else, a more family oriented kind of business sort of operation. And there are customers who are actively trying to make the jump, but can't because of a capacity issue. There isn't enough capacity outside of the block that these people control. And so you would think, hey, when you corner the market in a particular place, this is like the capitalist thing to do, right? Is just to, try to maximize your margins as much as possible. And it is a good strategy if all you're thinking about is right now. And I lived through this myself. Back in my Yellow Page days, when I first started with the Yellow Pages, it was a subsidiary of the telephone company. And the people who trained me were always saying, we don't want to sell an ad for a year. We want to sell an ad for a decade. They had a very long-term view, and that was, transmitted to us as salespeople. Because if you oversold a client, they might not be able to handle all the phone calls that a bigger ad might deliver, or the expense might grow too big. And if they don't have the capacity to serve the demand, then they're not going to be able to take full advantage and they won't benefit from the added inquiries that a larger ad could get. And so what we did with most people is we grew them over time. We like as their business grew, we grew their ad campaign and we delivered more calls for them that they could accommodate and handle. As they grew their capacity, we would then want to grow their inquiries some more, right? And it actually created this logical lockstep of interest between us and the business we were serving so that both of us would see the value in the relationship and both of us would want to keep doing it forever and ever. And this would lock in long term profitability, which was the strategic direction of the company at the time. And then we were sold to KKR, right? And when we were sold to KKR, which is a big PE firm out of New York City, the strategy changed entirely overnight because what KKR's plan was they were going to buy this sleepy directory business. They were going to try to juice up the earnings, demonstrate growth, and they were going to spin it off into a publicly traded security, right? And so all of a sudden, it became about transactional growth, transactional sales growth versus long-term relationship. So things that we had never done before, like the old established management would never do a promotion on adding color, for example, or a promotion on growing the size of your ad. Everything had to be value sold. So we never had any specials or discounts. Every time I would meet with a customer year after year, I would demonstrate why it was worthwhile to pay the full asking price for the next larger size or the added price for putting color in your advertisement, for example. And then they would see the benefit and then they would be, then they would enjoy the fact that I had brought them there the next year and we would meet again and we would talk about the next move, whether it was to stay the same or grow or whatever it was. What KKR did is they said, no, we want to incentivize quick jumps in revenue. So then when I was going into customers, maybe who had the same ad for years and years and years, and I would say to them, look, there's a 30% off discount if you want to add color. With the discount, it means you're only going to pay 7 or 8% more than you're paying now to add color. Would you like to do it? And almost everyone would say yes. But do you think then, when I went back next year, that they were ready to pay full price for that color ad? No, they were not interested, right? They would say, "Oh, okay, it's not on sale anymore. Take it back out." Right? And then we would end up taking a step backwards. But the whole reason why they wanted to do it was to boost the growth trend in the short term to make the story more appealing to the investors in the equity markets, right? That was their goal because they knew they were not going to hold the business long term, right? They knew they weren't going to hold it long term. So what does that have to do with the syrup, right? Let's get back to this story. So in the case of the syrup, we're talking about a company that a PE company that bought this food company. Now, let's understand a little bit about how private equity firms work. So they gather up investment from high net worth individuals or other entities, and they go out with a particular mission or thesis to make an acquisition. And sometimes search funders, if you've heard that term, they will do this too. They'll raise money investment from investors, and they'll go and they'll say, "I'm going to buy a company that looks like this, that does this, and I'm going to buy it." And so now they've got a story that they have out there to these investors, and what the investors want is a rate of return and maybe some upside in the exit, right? And so now they've got this driving force that is making them need to have some kind of short-term results that have to be borne out in order to meet the expectations of the people that have invested in them. The search funder, though, they have a goal of owning the business long term usually. So they usually have some kind of exit plan to get rid of those investors, right? If you ask most search funders, they'll say, "Yeah, I needed to use investors to raise the equity to make my deal, but 20 years from now, I don't want to have those partners. I want them out somehow." Right. And so they still have this long term view to the viability and mission of the business. A true PE company, though, they usually are raising money with a dated fund. So they'll accept investment and they'll say, "This is a 5-year fund, and we're going to invest in these kinds of businesses. And then at the end of 5 years, we're going to start selling the businesses. We're going to wind up the fund, return your capital to you." And often then they'll create other funds and try to get investors to put money into the next funds. But they know that they're going to get out. There is no long term in their plan. Secondly, the other important thing to know is that private equity management companies are typically compensated based on some kind of assets under management formula. So when the money is delivered to their fund, they have to go invest that money. And then now the money is under management. And they're typically taking a percentage of that every year for running the investment, right? So r- there may not even be an incentive in there may not even be incentive alignment for the PE managers to make sure that they exit the asset at a profitable point. That just the fact that they've invested the money now puts the assets under management, and they can start dinging the investors with that management fee based on what they invested. I mean, the value of the asset could even go down. They're still going to get that management fee. And then, furthermore, if you say it's a larger PE fund, which could have people in management and then other people that are actively working the day to day, the individual who is in charge of making decisions in a business that's been acquired could be even further removed from any kind of long-term vision of what would be good for the brand, the company, the consumers, the employees, et cetera, long term. So it's this divorcing of direct um, understanding or direct consequences of the present decisions that allows for it to be very difficult for values to be transmitted. And that's what I think is really different between small business and when you get into these bigger places, is that you actually have an individual's values that get transmitted throughout the organization. And this can even still exist in big organizations that have a predominant shareholder. Like if you think of certain businesses where of an individual or a family still controls a huge block of the stock, they can still implement their values into that organization to a certain degree. So let me flip back over here to the presentation because I want to talk about this some more. A little while ago, someone sent me this a link to this book. It's called The QSI Shift, and it's written by a guy named Chad Peterson. And Chad's a business broker, and I read the book. And basically, what Chad's program is here, what he's talking about is he's talking about a wealth building strategy where you use a 90% SBA loan to buy a business, and you pay down your loan and you grow your business, and then you sell the business, and then you take all of your equity to then become a 10% down payment on another new acquisition that's 90% leverage. Rinse, repeat, do several times. And he kind of plots out that a person might be able to achieve this routine several times over the course of their um, career in ownership. Okay. So, um, yeah, I've met people before who were doing this. Why isn't everyone doing this? Right? Why wouldn't everyone kind of continuously do this over and over and over again? It's interesting because when I meet, and I mentioned before when I started the video that I'll meet a lot of people who are submitting inquiries to me, or they'll book a coaching call or whatever, and they're very numbers oriented people. So they'll be talking about ROI, return on investment, return on equity. They'll be talking about their leverage. They'll be talking about all of these number things. But I don't meet very many people who do the acquisition, especially a high leverage acquisition, and then continue to have that same mind space throughout the repayment of that loan. And one of the great um, sort of examples of that, and I'm gonna share my screen again. This was a video. I did a whole series, a season of a show called Your Exit Squad with Mike Finger. And our episode number 101 was called The Passive Income Mirage. And I'll put a link to it down below. But one of the great things about this story is it's a husband and wife team, and they told the story about how they had a plan. They basically read all the books, like E Myth and all that kind of stuff. And they had a plan to build a cafe, build all the systems, the SOPs, the operating manual, and they went and got an SBA loan and they built out their business and they worked out all the kinks and they actually succeeded in stepping out of the day to day and getting different managers to run everything in the business. And their whole plan was to build this model template business and then to go and replicate it again and again and again and again and again. And I meet a lot of people with this plan. Okay. Um, because it's like Ray Kroc's plan. It's like it's the McDonald's story. It's like so many of the great stories about business that you've heard over and over again. I recommend you watch the video, and here's why. Number one, they sort of reveal the truth about passive income in ownership of small businesses, but there's a key part in there where they get to the end of their SBA loan and they realize here we are, we're in a position now where we can probably borrow again and open up a few of these locations, but they chose not to do it. And this is something that I've seen over and over again throughout my career, knowing entrepreneurs that have done this, is that once you've lived through the stress of having the debt over your head, once you've lived through, being forced to run things really in a tight fashion so you can make that debt service payment and somehow figure out how you're going to get the money for capital expenditures or other growth opportunities, etc. Once you get to the end of that big debt, you really think twice about signing up for it again. And and that was the comment to the person who shared that QSI book with me. That was the comment I made to that person. I'm like, yeah, you know, this is definitely a plan, right? And some people can pursue this plan. But in my experience, by the time you're ready to implement step two of the plan, your whole attitude may have changed. So your attitudes, your ideas, etc., about small business are going to evolve over the time that you are involved in the small business. That's sort of a truism that I wanted to point out here today. Um, and let's talk about that syrup, right? Let's talk about the comments that the lady put about you know initially about the marketing, but when people talk about small business owners wanting to exit and how some of them can, you know, choose who they want to sell to, and some of them want top dollar by selling to someone like a private equity firm, but others are concerned about their business legacy. I mean, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a business owner who understands what could be done in their business if somebody really was just trying to amp up short-term returns, right? If someone was just trying to maximize margins in the moment, and they don't want that. And so they're actually looking for the right candidate who is going to be a person that is going to, obviously, individuals are going to have their own values, but whose values are going to be compatible enough with those of the sellers that the seller can trust the buyer to actually run their business in a certain way that is going to carry out those values that gave the business its, I don't know, its unique special little reason to exist, the reason why people want to do business with it, right? And the only way that you're ever going to do this as a buyer is by having an opportunity to create a relationship with that seller. These are the kinds of things that are going to be transmitted through talking with the seller. and probably not just once. They're going to be the kinds of things that you can let people know about when you're communicating, with a letter or something like that. Like if you in your initial outreach, you can kind of let people know a little bit about you and what you're about. It's a big part of what we talk about actually all the time in my group coaching program. Um, and if you want to learn more about that, just go over to businessbuyeradvantage.com. It's like step 3, I think, in the process is the group coaching program. But that humanizing factor, letting a business owner know who you are, what you're about, what your intentions are, and making sure that you are in alignment. Um, People have always known this, I think. Like a lot of the people that I've worked with traditionally, especially more than a couple years ago, before this whole search fund thing got started and people were making a big deal out of it, there were always business buyers, and they were looking to make deals and they were looking to acquire businesses. What makes, I think, this new batch of people, these search funders, a little bit different is a lot of them are just people that went to business school because they wanted to do business and they wanted to be a CEO or something like that, and they're being turned on to this idea of acquisition entrepreneurship, and they're really getting lit up by the numbers. And I hear it in the conversations that I have. Uh, Before you jump in and get too excited, just think about what's important to you and where you want to go, and take a look at, develop some relationships. How about this? Develop some relationships with some real small business owners. See what it really is like to lead this lifestyle. See what it's like to be a small business owner and what kinds of demands it's going to create on you and what sort of things you're going to be thinking about, because it's not something that's all about the numbers. To circle back to the gas biz guy, you know, his business is an extension of his lifestyle and his values and what he feels are important. And that's a pretty common sort of way of looking at it from across the field of different small business owners that I've had the pleasure of meeting. Anyway, a little bit of a different video today. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And again, if you want to find me over on Twitter, my handle is at dbarnettmoncton. I'd love to participate in some conversations over there with you. And we'll say see you later. Don't forget to sign up for my email list, and show sponsor Mark Willis. Check his stuff out. Go over to newbankingsolution.com. If you've got money passing through your hands and you are looking for a way to build up a real equity asset that you can use for liquidity at any point down the line, check it out. It's a great program.
So, how can you learn more about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium sized businesses? Easy. Go over to my blog site, davidcbarnett.com, where you can learn more about me and how I work with my clients. You can learn more about my books and courses that I've prepared for you. You can find out how to subscribe to my email list, the YouTube playlists, and more. There's literally hundreds of hours of content there, all for free, and I'd love for you to be my guest. Special thanks go to Mark Willis at Lake Growth Financial, today's video sponsor. Mark helps people better manage their personal and business finances through the Bank on Yourself insurance strategy. This is something I've done personally and I've seen others use it successfully for years. Go to newbankingsolution.com to find all the interviews I've done with Mark and learn more about the advantages of these programs. While there, sign up for a free consultation to learn what this solution might look like for you.